My name is Althea Rooke. I am 70 years old, a widow for almost 5, and I have learned that people stop listening to you the moment they decide you are finished. They look at your gray hair and your soft voice and assume you are a relic. I let them think that for a while. Thanksgiving dinner was at my son's house this year. Rowan and his wife Verity had just renovated their place in Savannah. New marble counters, a chandelier big enough to shame the neighbors, and a mortgage half covered by the co-signature my late husband and I gave them. They never mentioned that part anymore. The table gleamed like a magazine spread. Verity was all gold and gloss, pouring wine as if hosting a corporate gala instead of a family meal. I had brought my best pecan pie, the one Harlan loved, still warm when I set it on the counter. No one looked up. Rowan talked about real estate. Verity corrected him with that bright, brittle laugh that sounds like glass under pressure. Halfway through dinner, I said something small. Something about Harlan's old recipe for oyster dressing. Verity didn't even look up. She just waved her manicured hand and said, "Oh, shut up, you're just the widow." The room went perfectly still. My fork slipped from my hand, clinking against the plate. Rowan didn't speak. He stared at his wine glass as though he'd find his backbone floating in it. I folded my napkin, placed it neatly beside the plate, and stood. My knees ached, but I kept my posture straight. No speeches, no tears. The air smelled of turkey rosemary and arrogance. I walked to the counter, left the pie untouched, and let the door close behind me. Outside, the evening air was heavy with the scent of salt and pine. Spanish moss swayed over the road as I drove home, the headlights cutting through ribbons of fog. The streets were empty, except for the weight sitting behind my ribs. They thought I was leaving dinner. They didn't realize I was walking toward proof, toward the one drawer in my house that never opened without reason. Sleep never came that night. The house made its usual noises, the hum of the refrigerator, the sigh of the old porch screen, but my body felt like it belonged to someone bracing for an earthquake. I kept shifting in bed, the ache in my knees pulsing with every turn. At midnight, I gave up. I wrapped my robe around me and padded down the hallway. The floorboards creaked softly under my bare feet. In the living room, the porch light filtered through lace curtains, thin and cold. Harlan's chair sat where it always had, turned slightly toward the window, as if he might walk back in and sit down. I rested my hand on its worn armrest and whispered, "You'd have hated that dinner." My voice caught halfway out. He used to tell me, "Keep the keys in your pocket, Althea. People forget who built the house when they start redecorating it." At the time, I thought he was talking about carpentry. Now I wasn't so sure. The oak cabinet stood beside the old secretary desk, heavy, solid, impossible to move without effort. On its top drawer, written in Harlan's neat block letters, were the words, "Estate do not disturb." I had not opened it since his funeral. I hesitated. My fingers hovered over the brass handle. Then I thought about Verity's smirk, about Rowan's silence, and I pulled. The drawer stuck for a second, then slid open with a low groan. Inside were folders stacked with the precision only Harlan could manage: tax records, property deeds, vehicle titles, insurance renewals. And near the back half, tucked beneath a ledger, lay a thick white envelope. My name was written across it in his hand. For Althea, if they forget who built it. The sight of it made my throat close. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside, a single page and several clipped documents. His handwriting leaned slightly to the right, the way it did when he was tired. If you're reading this, it means they've started to forget. Everything, house accounts, cabin, and business line, is in your name. There were too many borrowed signatures. Protect yourself first. They won't understand now, but they will when it's gone. The paper trembled between my fingers. He had seen it coming, and somehow he had left me the keys. The sky outside was still the color of iron when I poured my first cup of coffee. It tasted like paper and nerves, but it kept my hands from shaking. The letter lay open on the table beside me, the words I'd read a dozen times already, burning holes in the page. At 6 sharp, I picked up the landline and dialed the number printed on Merrick Hale's old business card. He'd been our attorney for more than 3 decades, the kind of man who still wore cufflinks to sign forms. He answered on the 4th ring voice, rough with sleep. Rooke, is everything all right? No, I said. And I think you already know why. A rustle of sheets, then his tone shifted fully awake. Tell me what happened. I read Harlan's letter out loud. The line went quiet, except for his breathing. I remember those documents, he said finally. Your husband came in about 8 months before he passed. We revised everything, full transfer of property, business, and trust authority to your name. I pressed my fingers against my temple. You didn't tell me. He asked me not to. Said you'd try to fix things instead of protect yourself. A sound left my throat. Half laugh, half sob. He was right. Merrick cleared his throat softly. Listen to me. You are the sole legal owner of every Rooke asset. The house, the lake cabin, the business accounts, everything. Your sons and their spouses have no standing, but you need to act fast. I already know who I'm protecting it from, I said. Good, he replied. Start by freezing any shared credit lines. Notify the credit union about updated authority. I'll draft a formal notice to the trust manager today. You'll need to sign it. Send it to my house, I said. I'm done driving to their side of town. Understood. When I hung up, the light outside had turned pale blue, the kind of color that looks cold even through curtains. I found a notepad in the drawer and wrote at the top in steady block letters, protection, not revenge. Underneath, I began listing names, account numbers, and what needed to be locked before anyone else woke up. By 7, the coffee had gone cold, but the air in the house felt sharper, purposeful. I set Harlan's letter beside the phone, the kind of talisman you touch before battle. The first call was to the credit union. A young man answered, cheerful in that rehearsed way of people who don't yet know what a life can cost. This is Althea Rooke, I said. I need to initiate a temporary freeze on all joint accounts and request verification protocols for access. He hesitated. Are you reporting fraud? I'm reporting oversight, I said. Mine. He transferred me twice, but within 30 minutes the accounts were locked pending verification. A confirmation email followed, time-stamped at 7:43 a.m. I printed it and slipped it into the manila folder marked Protection, Not Revenge. Next came the property management firm. The woman on the other end sounded startled when I told her to revoke co-access on the lake cabin. But Mrs. Rooke, she said your son's name was on it, I interrupted. It isn't anymore. There was a long pause. Then a quiet, understood, ma'am. We'll update the file immediately. By 10, I was standing on the front porch, signing the locksmith's work order. 2 witnesses initialed the document, while the man changed both cabin locks and delivered the spare keys in a sealed envelope. Fishing place, he asked. Used to be, I said. Now it's just mine again. When the truck pulled away, I sat on the steps with the envelope in my lap. The morning sun felt too bright, like it was watching. I opened the door, brewed a cup of tea, and set it on the counter. Steam curled up, then thinned into nothing. My phone buzzed. A message from Rowan. Hey, weird thing. Verity's card just declined at the market. You know anything about that? I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I powered the phone off and slid it face down on the counter beside the untouched cup. I'm not cruel. I murmured, my voice steady. I'm just finished being convenient. Outside, the wind pressed against the porch screens, testing the hinges, and I wondered how long before they realized the locks had changed on more than the doors. By dusk, the sky over Savannah had turned the color of tarnished copper. I parked in front of Rowan's house, the folder balanced on the passenger seat, my name embossed across its tab. Rooke Holdings, update. My hands didn't shake. I had already done the trembling. Verity opened the door before I reached the steps. Her smile was wide enough to split. Mother Rooke, she said, syrup sweet. We weren't expecting, I know, I said. She stepped aside, perfume thick enough to sting. Rowan stood near the dining table, phone in hand, expression unreadable. The chandelier above him threw light across the polished floor, same one Harlan and I had helped pay for. "What's this about?" he asked. I set the folder on the table, smoothing its edges. House, cabin, accounts, business filings. I came to deliver an update. Verity's laugh was short. "Oh, Althea, this sounds so dramatic." "I'm too old for drama," I said. "This isn't a negotiation. This is a notification." Rowan frowned. "You froze the cards, didn't you?" "Yes. And revoked all secondary access." Merrick Hale sent over the notarized confirmation. He looked at Verity. "Mom, you could have just called." "I did," I said. "For 20 years. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. I opened the folder and laid out 2 pages side by side. Effective immediately, all property management decisions, financial authorizations, and business rights fall under my signature alone. You are guests in assets you don't control." Verity's voice wavered, then steadied into sugar again. "You're making a mistake. We've handled things perfectly fine." I met her eyes. "You handled them like they were free." Rowan took a step forward, then stopped. I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt or disbelief, I couldn't tell which. "I'll expect keys to the cabin by Friday," I said. "Leave them in the mailbox. I'll know." No one spoke. The air felt heavy, like the moment before a storm, when everything holds its breath. I closed the folder, tucked it under my arm, and walked out. Behind me, I heard Verity's voice break the quiet, thin, brittle. "She can't do this." But I already had. 2 days later, Merrick called. His voice had that careful weight it gets when he's choosing which truth to hand me first. "I found something," he said. "It's about Harlan's old business line of credit." My grip tightened around the receiver. "That account was dissolved years ago, it was," he said quietly. "But your son reopened it using the old tax ID. About $180,000 in new loans were drawn over the past 2 years. Some listed as equipment upgrades, others personal withdrawals." For a moment, I couldn't feel my feet. While his father was dying, I said, "Yes." The word landed like the crack of a nail into wood. He continued, "The bank didn't catch it because the paperwork appeared legitimate. They assumed you authorized it. I didn't. I know, I'm sending you the documents. You'll want them for your records." When the line went dead, I sat at the table until the shadows stretched long across the floor. The printer whirred beside me, spitting out page after page, dates, amounts, signatures that weren't mine. Each sheet was a splinter. I stacked them neatly, pressed the edges square, and wrote on the folder's tab in dark ink firewood. The word looked too small for what it carried. Later, I opened Harlan's old ledger, the one where he used to track lumber orders. My handwriting joined his in the margins. "If they burn the bridge, I'll use the ashes for kindling." The clock ticked past midnight. Outside, the wind picked up, pressing against the windows like a heartbeat. I pictured Rowan, his crooked smile the way he used to bring Harlan screws instead of nails just to make him laugh. Somewhere along the way, that boy had turned into a man who signed his father's name to debts. Love without respect is like a house without shelter. You can still stand inside it, but the rain gets in. I closed the ledger and slid the firewood folder into my drawer beside Harlan's letter. Then I turned off the lamp, the room falling into the kind of darkness that doesn't frighten you anymore. It just tells you what's left to burn. The knock came just after 9 in the morning, 3 firm raps that carried authority, not politeness. When I opened the door, a uniformed deputy stood on the porch, hat in hand, the kind of man who looked uncomfortable even before he spoke. "Mrs. Rooke." "I have a notice here," he said. "Petition for capacity evaluation. Filed by Verity Rooke." The name didn't surprise me, but the words behind it scraped like rust. She's claiming you're not mentally fit to manage the estate, he continued, his eyes darting toward the living room. Standard procedure, ma'am. We're required to deliver it. I took the envelope, its seal already smudged from his fingers. Thank you, I said evenly. You can tell her lawyer to contact mine. He nodded once and left without meeting my eyes. By the time Merrick answered his phone, I had already read the petition twice. She forged this, I said. The notary's stamp is fake. Send me a photo, he replied. His voice sharpened the way it does when he smells blood. I'll handle it. That afternoon he called back. We traced it. Verity convinced a notary she knew to backdate a form, but the assistant came clean. She handed over the emails. The county prosecutor's drafting charges for forgery and falsified legal documents. I exhaled slowly. She tried to make me incompetent. She made herself that, he said. When I hung up, the phone rang again almost immediately. This time a smaller voice. Grandma. It was Isla. Her voice wobbled between fear and confusion. Mom's crying. She says you're taking everything away, that you're punishing us. I sat down at the kitchen table, the one with the faint burn mark from Harlan's first wood project. No, sweetheart, I said softly. I'm not taking anything. I'm just taking back the truth. Silence on the line, then a tiny sob. I miss how we used to be. So do I whispered. When the call ended, the house felt heavier than before. The papers on the counter looked less like victory and more like fallout. My silence had kept me safe, but it had built a wall high enough that even a child could feel the shadow. I left the envelope where it was unopened again, knowing the fight wasn't over, and wondering how much of my family would survive it. By Thursday morning, the storm had broken not in thunder, but in paperwork. Merrick called first. The counties accepted the plea deal, he said. Forgery and false filing. No jail time, but a permanent record and a fine that will sting. I let the words settle. She'll wear her own name like an affidavit now, I said quietly. Rowan's next, he added. He's agreed to a repayment plan, full restitution for the unauthorized loans. We'll move assets back under your sole control once the document's clear, he'll sign. He already did, yesterday afternoon. I felt something loosen inside me. Not joy, exactly, more like a knot, finally releasing its breath. That afternoon, I drove into town to pick up groceries. The supermarket was busy, the air heavy with chatter and the sound of carts squeaking. When I turned into the checkout line, I saw her. Verity stood 2 customers ahead, sunglasses on indoors, voice bright and brittle. The cashier swiped her card once, declined, again. Declined. Verity laughed too loudly. That's strange, try the other one. The machine beeped final and cold. The people behind her shifted, pretending not to look. I stood still, basket in hand. When she turned, our eyes almost met through the reflection of her lenses. I looked away. The cashier whispered. Ma'am Verity's smile cracked. I'll come back, she said, and left the groceries behind. When my turn came, I placed a loaf of bread and a jar of honey on the counter. Simple things unshared. Outside, the wind smelled of coming rain. As I loaded the bag into the car, my phone buzzed a message from Merrick SUV repossession completed. Cabin locks changed and confirmed. I watched the screen until it dimmed, then tucked it into my purse. The victory didn't roar. It exhaled. Driving home, I passed the street where Rowan used to race his bike as a boy. I remembered him waving at Harlan, shouting, "Watch me, Dad," the pure, easy faith of a child who believed everything could be fixed. By the time I reached my driveway, the sun had fallen behind the oaks. The house glowed faintly through the windows. I carried the groceries inside one hand, steady on the doorframe. The storm was over. The quiet at last belonged to me. By early spring, the air in Savannah had softened. The azaleas bloomed early that year, bright against the fences. like the city was trying to apologize for all the cold. I set up folding chairs in the community library room, a small circle with a pot of coffee in the middle. 6 women came, some newly widowed, others long practiced at surviving on their own. I started simple. It's called Estate Basics for Women, I told them. Not law school, not theory, just what no one bothered to tell us before it mattered. A woman named Ruth raised her hand. How'd you learn all this? Hard way, I said. The room chuckled, then fell quiet again. My husband Harlan believed in building things right the first time. I just had to learn to keep the keys in my own pocket. After class, a few lingered to ask questions. I wrote notes for each of them attorneys to call offices to visit. Before they left, I handed out pamphlets stamped with a small gold seal, the Harlan Rooke Second Chance Grant. Micro grant program, I explained. For widows who need help starting over, filing fees, bank deposits, a few good tools. It's small, but it's a start. Ruth touched my arm. He'd be proud, you know. I hope so, I said. That evening, Isla came by after school. She looked older than her 16 years, quiet, thoughtful. Mom doesn't know I'm here, she admitted. I just wanted to say hi. I poured her sweet tea and slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a single page and a certificate. A savings bond, I said. Enough to help when college comes. There's only one condition, she smiled, wary. What's that? Call me on my birthday each year. No excuses. She laughed softly. Deal. When she left, I stood on the porch, the dusk warm and humming. The brass plaque I'd ordered gleamed beside the doorframe, built by boundaries, kept by respect. I reached up and switched on the porch lamp, the same one Harlan wired decades ago. The bulb flickered once, then glowed steady, a quiet pulse of home. It's safe now, I whispered.